Welcome back. Let's go through the most common Git commands you'll need to know. Here are a few essential Git commands. Git add will add files to the staging area. The staging area is a place where all your changes are stored for your next commit. Adding files is equivalent to saving locally. You can specify whether you want to add a file by name or whether you want to add all the files currently in the repository. Git commit will commit changes to the repository, which essentially creates a snapshot of the current state of your code that you can revert back to later if needed. This is commonly referred to as staging your changes. Git push will push committed changes to a remote repository, which will update the remote repository and track each commit that happened in your local repository. Git merge merges the current changes committed into a local repository with the code currently pushed to the remote repository. If changes are not able to be easily auto-merged, you will be prompted to fix the conflicts manually. Git clone clones a repository from the remote to your local system. If you instead start a project on your local system and then create a remote repository to store it in later, there are a few more commands that you'll need. If you go this route, you'll use the git init command to create a local repo, and then use the git config command to set up permissions before starting a workflow and connecting to the remote repository. Git branch shows a list of all branches. Git checkout switches you over to the branch that you specify. You can also use git checkout to create a new branch. If you have questions about any of these commands and how to use them, make sure to check out the resources linked in the description. We will use these commands frequently in the coming activities, so you'll get lots of practice understanding what each of them do. Just to note, these are most of the commands that you'll need for a basic workflow. You don't need to remember tons and tons of commands or be an expert on Git to benefit from version control. Just understanding these basic commands are a great place to start and will offer you a lot of utility. I also quickly want to cover what a gitignore file is. If you have certain files that you never want the remote repository to track, you can create a gitignore file and add file names that will always be ignored when using the git add and git commit commands. This can be helpful if you're storing any password information or anything that you don't want to be available publicly in your remote repository. In the next video, we'll discuss the basic workflow for a student using GitLab. Stay tuned! The slides used for this presentation will be linked below, as well as additional resources about commands in Git.